Hey everyone, welcome to another artwork analysis. Now, I talk about a lot of the artists who work on games, but I don't really talk about games specifically. I want to go with a game that I'm sure a lot of people have heard of and what's really popular nowadays, and that's Overwatch. Now, I could go on and on about how great Overwatch's designs are, but I'm going to focus on the newest character that will enter the game, Hammond, or Wrecking Ball. So, Hammond is probably, or was probably rather, a design nightmare. And what I mean by this is, how on earth did they create this concept and make it work in that universe? Now, I honestly think while there are a lot of incredibly good designs in the game, I want to talk about Hammond specifically because he is very interesting in a way that it shouldn't work, but it does. And a lot of cases, it's because they executed it almost perfectly. I can't go on about how perfect, how good gaming design is when it comes to Overwatch. And I advise that even if you might not be a fan of the actual game, you might want to look into the designs to get a glimpse of what really top tier art and designs are for gaming. So anyways, enough of that. I will start by talking about creating the sense of weight, silhouette, scale. Of course, I've talked about that in previous talks, but this one will be obviously more apparent, and I'll probably tap into this in the other topics as well. Thinking as a whole, and how you can balance two or more characters and make it a coherent, singular design. So right off the bat, when you look at this particular design, you notice that they had to put a hamster, a sci-fi friendly hamster, in a mechanical beast. And not only that, but the background story is that this hamster created this mechanical thing. So we have to really think about story-wise. What is it about this that seems to just work? And a lot of it, I feel like, I mean, I could talk about this in a lot of cases, but I wanted to give a sense of story first. Actually, I didn't write this down, but I want to just talk about it first of all. When it comes to Hammond, he's a hamster. If he were to create a mechanical beast of what he knows in the society he's at, he'll probably shape his mechanical thing based off what he would have encountered in his education. If people don't know, he came from a space colony and he got shot into Earth as he escaped. So what would scientists have shown him? Most likely ball shapes. And why this kind of correlates with the first point, which is creating weight, is because the ball shape is actually pretty... It kind of fits with Hammond's design as well. From a story standpoint, we think, okay, this hamster probably would have played with rubber balls or something when he was up there in the space colony. So, story-wise, it makes sense. In addition, the fact that the mechanical beast is based off of a ball, and that his facial shape is also really round-like. It's sort of like they the two shapes work really well together because given that Hammond also looks like this, it makes sense for him to sort of get inspiration for his pretty obese hamster-like appearance. So the other thing with how to create weight, I want you to look into sort of the silhouette of Hammond. So, whereas you could say that the silhouette of a ball would be just a perfect sphere, if you were to just tamper a little bit to make it a teardrop, sort of like you're squishing the ball downwards and creating more weight. So I'm going to just draw it out here. It's very subtle, but this little bit of design change helps you create a real sense of weight. Notice that this feels like there's water in the plastic bag, so this feels like it's affected by gravity more. Whereas a circle, of course, is a very neutral shape. Now, it could also be a very strong shape too, but for the sake of emphasizing weight's not the best. So we notice that even, and heck, if you really want to push it, even if you add the legs, if you add the silhouette of the legs, you get something like this, which is pretty similar to Hammond himself. So, a lot of cases, both of these characters relate in the sense of weight and the way they work with the silhouette. Now, this obviously could have been a stretch or a coincidence, but when it comes to Overwatch, I kind of think they have a whole board meeting of people who would probably choose the best designs, and this one kind of works. Even though one is a hamster and one is a mechanical monstrosity, a machine of war, they both have similarities. And that goes into point number 4, actually. It's kind of hard to talk about one point without talking another. When you are designing, if you're designing something that has to work together, whether it's, well, I'm going to start talking about different references. The League of Legends, there's Rakan and Xayah. They are a romantic couple as well. I guarantee you, if you Google that, you'll see that they definitely designed those two characters together. And in this case as well, Hammond, these two characters had to be designed to get together. So even if we want to talk about the colors, notice how the colors seem to correlate with each other. There are instances of where there's oranges on the machine itself. Now, the turquoise here is a very nice complementary color to the orange, but it's grayed out a bit, desaturated a bit, so that it fits with the more orangey, saturated color scheme. Now, again, when we go back to just thinking as a whole, when you look at silhouette, you notice how together they create one big teardrop, and it's actually more triangular, actually, now that I look at it. This is sort of like saying Hammond relies on this machine in order to be strong. If this hamster were to just sit out of the machine, if he didn't have the machine, he would just be a rounded hamster. It wouldn't be this strong. Again, everything is deliberate. So notice how the moment you see him on the machine, you feel like he's alive. He can actually do something. And as a final note, I want to talk about scale. So scale is something I've talked about in previous videos, but in this case, notice how, going back to the story of him being the machine, he relies on the machine. And the fact that he's so small compared to the machine creates instant interest. Scale is one of those things that absolutely can tell the story without even saying anything. If this hamster was as big as this machine, then it probably wouldn't be very interesting. But the fact that you see this hamster confidently on the top of this wrecking ball, you feel like, hey, this is no joke. This hamster, who might be a joke by himself, is definitely a force to be reckoned with when he has his machine with him. And that's where scale, again, in context with the story, makes interest. And if let's say you take this image, or these images rather, and just show anybody, they would immediately tell you that this hamster is clearly in control of this machine. Maybe it's his friend, maybe it's his creation, but you get that sense immediately, and that's great design. So if you were to get one lesson from this entire video, I would really look into if you have a client gig where you are designing deliberately a character which involves several characters. Like there are instances where you do that, especially when you are doing all the characters for a certain franchise. They have to work together. A party is not a party if everyone is designed separately. You want to look into how do they look side by side, or in this case, Hammond is in the machine, so you have to look into that as well. How do they look together? And then once they look well together, then you can start looking at the details of, hey, what does Hammond look like? And maybe adding the details of the secondary parts. Anyways, thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.